I've got my simple sequence here ready to add some titles to. So let's have a look at using the title tool to create something for the opening and something as a rolling title at the end. First of all, I'm going to line up my playhead over this shot so I can use it as a placeholder. And then I'm just going to press Control-T or Command-T on the keyboard to bring up the new title dialog. Now, before I go in, of course, I can do this by clicking on the New Item button in the Project panel and choosing Title, or I can go to the File menu and choose New and choose Title there. You'll notice I can also automatically create a Photoshop file that has the right dimensions for my sequence. So anyway, I'm going to press Control-T, Command-T. I'm going to call this the text that's going to be in it. This is a film called Double Identity. You'll notice everything's all set correctly for my sequence, so I'll click OK, and here I am in the title tool. Now, because the title tool uses object-oriented design, I need to have an item on screen in order to begin making changes to it and looking at different settings. So I'm going to choose the T type tool here, which is the keyboard shortcut T, and I'm going to start typing the name. Quite difficult to see there, so I'm going to go back to the selection tool and drag this down. I'm going to go Having selected this item, I'm going to go up to the top and just crank up the font size a little bit. I'm clicking and dragging on these numbers here. I'm going to choose this item and I'm going to just try out a few different fonts. And I'm not too concerned with the size right now. Now I say I'm going to click on fonts. What I'm actually doing here is clicking on title styles. And actually, this is, I suppose, a bit more of a deco era production. And I think maybe, I don't know, I actually think that first one kind of works. Now these styles incorporate colors, fonts, strokes, fills, gradients, whatever you like. They can all be incorporated into these styles. And you can make your own very easily by clicking on the panel menu here in the Title Styles panel and choosing New Style. I think I'm going to go for this first option here, Caslon Pro. But I'm going to need to change the font size back down again. So let's shrink this down a bit. In fact, what I think I'm going to do is select this item and drag this a fair bit further down. And then I'm going to increase the kerning to spread this out a little. And maybe even double click in here and add an extra spacer. Or in fact, if I undo that, I can click in and increase the kerning manually, character by character, just to space this out a bit. So if I'm happy with that, if I hold the Shift key down, you see I can click on the corner here and increase the size and maintain the aspect ratio of the text. But if I just undo that and don't hold down the Shift key, I'll just make this a bit taller. And then over in my Title Properties panel here, I think I'm going to put a bit of a shadow and a stroke on. Now at the moment, you can see that the white areas of this text are blending into the reflected light on the road surface from this car, which doesn't make it very visible. So I'm going to tick the box to create a shadow for this item. I've got it selected, so I'm seeing the properties for it in the Title Properties panel here. And then rather than setting the distance really high so you can see I get a real three-dimensional effect, I'm going to set this to 0, and then I'm going to crank up the size and the spread. There we go. And then I'm just going to drop the opacity a bit so it just creates an outline and increases the visibility of the text. I might just turn the spread down a bit. Maybe, actually, let's reduce the size a little. There we go, just to soften that impact. And then I'm also going to add an outer stroke. So the way the Properties panel works is you select your item and then just work your way down the list of settings from top to bottom. And each one of these categories of settings, you see here's a category and here's another one. Each one of these will do something to the object you select. If you've got 5 different objects, could be a square or a circle or another bit of text, you'll apply the settings that you adjust to the item that you have selected. So here I've got an outer stroke. I'm going to add one. And in fact, that's kind of about right. 10 point I think is okay. Solid, black color, that's all right. Let's click away. I think that's reasonably visible. What I might do is turn on the bold for this. Yeah, and now it's gone a little bit off center, so I'm going to center that. I'm just creeping over the edge of the safe title zone here, this inner box where I want to keep my titles if possible, but I think that looks okay. Now I'm going to close this panel, and of course the title is created automatically in my project panel, so I can drag this straight over to my timeline. This title is going to have the duration set by my preferences under General. Here I've got Still Image Default Duration. I can change the duration as much as I like. It doesn't really have to stay 150 frames, but there's my default. And if I zoom in a little bit on the timeline, it looks like it's not a bad fit for the first shot anyway. All that remains to do is open up the Video 2 track where I've placed the title so it's in front of this background shot. Hold down the Control or Command key and click and click and click and click to add some control points to this rubber band. And then I'm just going to drag down. Oops. Now you see what I've done there is very, very easy to do. I've clicked without holding the Control key down, and I've missed the rubber band, and I've accidentally just dragged the clip over the top of my timeline. And if you're new to video editing, this can be one of those panic moments. But panic not. All you need to do is press Control-Z or Command-Z, and you're back to where you were before. This is the beauty of non-linear editing. So let's take a look at that. I'll just turn the audio off for a second. So there's our fade up and our fade down, and we're into the first shot. Okay, that'll work for me. Now I'm going to press the / key on my keyboard to zoom out of my timeline enough to see the entire sequence. And now I think what I want is some end credits for my closing shot here. Now I've already created a text document which has my titles in it. And the reason I've created a text document, I'll just show you it here, is, and you can use text editor in macOS if you want to do this. The reason I've done this is simply because it makes it easy to see all the text and to make sure my spacing is equal. So I've got that created already. I'm going to go into the title tool, Control-T or Command-T. I'll call this End Credits. This time around, at the top of the title here, I'm going to go to the Roll Crawl options, and I'm going to call this a roll. I'm going to start off screen. I'm going to end off screen. I don't need it to particularly ease in and ease out and change the speed of the playback. I'm going to click OK. And now I've got an extra scroll bar here. So all I have to do is go to my text tool. But first of all, I'm going to go back to my end titles. I'm going to press Control-A or Command-A to select all, and then Control-C or Command-C to copy. You could do that with the edit menu, but it's a little bit quicker this way. And then inside the title tool, I'm going to click and I'm going to press Control-V or Command-V to paste. And that's going to paste this text for me. And now my navigation bar here begins to make sense. The only problem is, of course, all of my text is left justified. So right at the top here, I'm going to click to center justify it, go back to my selection tool, click away, and now I can drag through and see if I think this works. If I want to, I can click up on the numbers here and drag through the shot to see how this looks. And I think there's a bit of a problem because the text isn't super visible against the lighter parts of the shot. So again, I'm going to select this item. I'm going to go down to my strokes. I'm going to add an outer stroke. Maybe I'll make this one a bit beefier. Let's just crank that up a little bit more so it's nice and visible. I think that works. Then I'll close the title tool. Here it is in my bin, and you'll notice it has a different icon. This is telling me that this is a video clip effectively. I can drop this on my timeline, and it's going to take as long as the clip is on the timeline to play back, which at the moment is, of course, only about 5 seconds, which is pretty fast. So I'm going to trim out this shot, and now we've got a reasonable playback speed, and I've got my end credits. I've been a bit silly here, and I've called everybody Mr. or Miss Smith. So you can perhaps put some titles with real character names on, but that's how you produce a rolling title. So that's creating titles with Premiere Pro CS6. Making changes is simply a question of double-clicking on the title on the timeline, making sure you have the item selected, and then here, for example, I could maybe choose a different fill color. There we are. Oh, that's terrible. That's a bit too dark, isn't it? Let's go for a light blue. Close the panel, and you've changed your title. Don't forget that if you do this, you're going to be changing any instance of this title in your project. Be careful, because if you've used a title more than once, you're updating all of them. If you want to make an independent copy, open up the clip, and then click on this button, New Title based on Current Title. And if you watch the bin over here, when I click this button, I get an option to create a new name. I'll call this New Titles, just so you can see it. And there it is in the bin automatically. Now I have an independent copy that I can work on. So there you are. That's creating and editing titles with Adobe Premiere Pro CS6.